For a long time, I believed that peace was something that had to be granted. Not something I could choose, not something available to me right now in everyday life, but it was something that had to be issued from the outside, from the universe, before I was allowed to feel it on the inside. Specifically, I needed an apology, and a big one, a real one, a competent one, the kind that fully acknowledges what happened to me, the pain I endured, all the things that I had gone through. And I was waiting for that. And until it arrived, my peace was on hold. My life was on hold. And I carried that condition for a long time. I organized it carefully, I rehearsed it thoroughly, I made sure the evidence was airtight, had it all in my mind and ready to go. I was going to prove my case, and I had no doubts about it that I deserved peace, that I deserved to be repaid for all that I had lost. And if any of that sounds familiar, if you have a case file of your own that you've been building, I want to show you something about how the process works. When you've saved all these things and you're ready to present it to God, or as I call it, the arbiter of the universe, standing in line for your turn. Finally, you're getting your turn, it's your chance, and you're not going to mess it up. You are going to get what's coming to you. This is what you've been waiting for. You're almost there. You're almost going to be repaid for all the wrongdoings, and everyone's just going to be in wonder at how awesome your life is going to be as soon as this happens. At some point in our lives, most of us develop a case file. In my case, I had a couple of them. It started out with a file folder, and then after one incident, one event, whatever, one wrong turn, one bad move, one depression, one bad break, one break up, one lost job, one blown opportunity. They all started getting their own files. And then the files were so big I needed a file box to put them in, and then 2 file boxes to put them in. And they were meticulously organized. I had receipts with dates and times and the circumstances. I had affidavits of what happened, who wronged me, why they wronged me, and why I deserve to be repaid for that wrong. And the boxes were full, and I finally got my chance. Got my appointment in the waiting room. So I grabbed my boxes, all happy, smiley, still anxious on the inside, like, all right, this is it. I'm going to present my case. I'm going to get my recompense. I will get what's owed to me for all the pain and suffering that I had to endure. What was in these files? Evidence of what had happened to me. Itemized record of what I had lost and what I had endured. Documentation of proof of what was done to me and what happened afterwards. And what was never acknowledged, what was never apologized for, what was never paid back for. The things that were stolen that were never returned. You may be like that. And some people carry it quietly. Some people carry it loudly. Some people show their receipts to anyone that they talk to. This is what happened to me, and look at how much it cost me. Aren't you mad about it too? You should be mad about it too. Why don't we be mad about it together, and we'll talk about it, But some people have been carrying their files around so long, they've forgotten that they're even carrying it. It's just part of the weight. It's part of who they are. This is who I am. I am the carrier of all of my grief, of all of my anger, of all of my self-pity and self-doubt. It's all in the box, but it's not my fault. At least most of it's not. It's all these other people's fault. It's all circumstances' fault. It's all the universe's fault. God, it's all your fault. And that's how I felt sometimes. But the file is there regardless, how we carry it, or if we even acknowledge that there is a file being built. And underneath it usually is one persistent belief. The reason why we're carrying this all around. Before I can be at peace, somebody owes me something. And in fact, a lot of somebodies owe me a lot of something. But I'll take one big blank check, if you don't mind. But they owe you what? An apology, an acknowledgement, a correction, a reversal, some form of cosmic reimbursement for what this has cost you. And until that arrives, peace is on hold. Your life is on hold. I know that feeling. I lived inside it for a very long time. And here's what I've come to understand about what's actually happening underneath all of that carrying that grief around with you. I've come to realize that one of the biggest blocks to our internal healing, and I mean this precisely and not poetically or metaphorically, is demanding that the past be different in order for us to be at peace now. And I'll say that again, that we may not consciously realize it, but we are demanding that our past that had hurt us so much and then gave us so much grief and pain be different in order for us to be at peace now. Something has to change in our past in order for me to be okay now because it hurt too much. But that's not demanding justice. That's not wanting repair. That's not hoping things had gone differently. That's a demand. It's like, I expect it. The problem is that the payment mechanism you're waiting for does not exist. Not in the way we want it to. Not in the way we're demanding it. Not because the universe is cruel or God wants you to suffer. Not because justice doesn't matter. But because reality doesn't process that particular reimbursement. Not in the way we want it. And especially not in the time frame that we demand it. And I want to show you metaphorically exactly what that looks like. Because there's an image I keep coming back to, and I think it sums it up perfectly, and I've already alluded to it a little bit. So, you finally got your appointment to the Arbiter of the Universe. You're in the office. Huge! Thousands of people in there, and line starts here. You walk in, I walked in with my 2 big giant boxes of files, all ready to go, rehearsing what I'm going to say when I get to the front of the line over and over again, make sure I don't miss nothing, make sure they're not going to dismiss any of my claims. And I stood in line, just rehearsing it. And everyone in that line, the thousands of other people, they're all carrying the same thing, to different degrees. File boxes, some people have a wagon with 10 file boxes on them. And files, boxes, all meticulously ready to go, folders stuffed with evidence, invoices of every pain, every injustice, every loss, every grievance, everything that happened that should not have happened, or that didn't happen the way you wanted it to, and you're still mad about it, or still angry about it, still hurt about it, still carrying that pain around with you. People have been in this line for years, sometimes decades. Yes, you got your appointment, but there is no closing time. You're standing there until you get your spot. So there I was, carrying those boxes. Chit-chat conversation, you're learning about the person in front of you, the person behind you, you're listening to normal stuff, but still rehearsing. It's all about me. This is my shot. This is my chance to get back what was stolen. So I stood in that line. For over 10 years I stood in that line. If I'm honest, I stood in that line for 35 years. But the line moved slowly. But eventually, after years, you finally reach the window. Yes! Finally! My chance. Here we go. Not going to blow it. I've got too many things. I'm ready to go. I've been practicing this, right? I'm an expert in telling you about my problems and how life is shit on me and how I deserve recompense for that. So here we go. Arbiter of the Universe. Next, please. Big smile, walk up, show him my boxes. He starts, flicking through them and stuff. He's calm. He's attentive. He's genuinely listening to my story as I'm going through and explaining everything. And that's part of the reason why the line is so long, because everyone is doing the same thing. They're not you don't have a time limit. So therefore, you're spending as much time as you want explaining stuff and over-explaining stuff and re-explaining stuff and going over stuff. And did you see this file? And look at this motherfucker did this to me. So all these things, he's taking it in, nodding his head. Yep. So you present your case, you tell your story, and you're finally done. Whew, that feels like a little weight off by itself. And you're so excited. You're so excited. You just know it's going to go in your favor. And then after listening to you, after you've completed, he smiles, he nods his head slowly and says, yes, you were wronged. You deserve recompense from everything that you have went through. He said, yes, you were wrong. You were hurt. Everything in these files is accurate, and true, and I believe you deserve to be repaid for them. The evidence is solid. The injustices were real. The claim is completely legitimate, and I agree with you. However, he says, that's not how things work here. Thank you for your life. Please fill out a comment card on your way out. He wasn't cruel, not dismissive, not even indifferent exactly, just structurally limited. Thank you for your life. Thank you for all your pain and suffering. Thank you for all that you've done. But that's not how things work in reality. Would you please fill out a comment card on your way out? Next! You may get out of the line now, sir. The arbitrator agreed with everything, validated everything, acknowledged everything. You were right. You were right all along. But he still couldn't issue the refund because the refund does not exist in the form we want it to. And it certainly doesn't come in the time frame we demand it to. The past cannot be corrected retroactively. The wound cannot be unwounded, as I said before, and the years cannot be returned. Reality doesn't have the mechanism to do that. And the survey, the one about asking about your experience in the waiting room, that's not about the injustice. It was not about the wound. It was about your time standing in line. Was it worth it? Was all the pain and anguish you put yourself through revisiting and notating and documenting all the things that were wrong and wronged you, was all that time and energy and effort worth it? Here's the thing that I realized that kind of changed my perception of it. The arbitrator agreeing with me that I was wronged and I deserved payback for it doesn't change what the arbiter can actually do. It doesn't change what the universe or God can actually do, which means the legitimacy of the claim was never the issue. Even though I spent years trying to convince myself, anyone who would listen, prayers to God, whatever, that this is a legitimate claim, and therefore I deserve something. I demand it. But the issue, it was something quieter and more uncomfortable. I had made my peace conditional on reimbursement that was never coming. There was another fantasy I created, that I deserve it, therefore I should have it. And while I waited in line, while I processed my pain and my grief for decades, putting things in file, making sure they were in order, making sure no water got on, making sure they didn't spill, making sure no one stole it, took this from me. My life was happening, and I wasn't participating in it. It was just kind of floating by because I was waiting for that payment to make everything all right. And here's what I had to understand and realize before anything could really shift. Justice and healing are related, but they are not the same event. You can receive justice and still not be healed. Perfect example is anyone who's had a loved one murdered and the perpetrator gets sent to prison for life or whatnot. You don't feel healed. You don't feel you got paid back. You figured, yes, they got what they deserved from them, but it can never change what happened. It can never take away what that did to you. Nothing that happens next can change the fact of what happened. Your future cannot erase the past. The record stands, the arbiter agrees, the evidence is solid. But here is what I finally understood. Continued suffering does not make the wound more real. Keeping the files active and up to date does not increase the legitimacy of the claim. Bleeding from an old wound continuously does not function as proof or documentation that you were hurt and that it was real. You do not have to keep bleeding to prove you were cut. The wound was real. Continued bleeding is not required as evidence of that. Peace is not approval of what happened. Peace is not forgiveness on a timeline that isn't yours. Peace is simply this: withdrawing your present life from the waiting room. Taking your life back. Using it for something other than standing in a long line that leads to a window that can validate everything but repair nothing. But here's where it gets more complicated, because the caring isn't only about justice. There's something else underneath it that took me an even longer time to figure out. And you know what really was going on in my body, in my mind, in my system during this entire time? When I was waiting for peace, when I was expecting repayment, when I was demanding something be done about it, my inner voice was like this: I can't be at peace now. My past hurt me too much. Life owes me an apology. I only know who I am with my pain and regrets. This is who I am. That's why I carry these boxes around. Don't you know? Didn't you see? You were there for some of it. If you're God, you saw all of it, and you did nothing to help me out. And I cannot accept peace until I get my recompense, until this is released from me. So don't take that away from me. Don't take away my pain. Don't take away my grief. That is who I am. That is all I have. And until I'm repaid for that, I shan't give it up. I won't give it up. I only know who I am with my pain and regrets. Does that sound like you? Does it sound like someone you love? I bet it does. Because that is not weakness. That is not self-pity. That is not someone choosing to suffer and having a pity party, even though some people will tell you that. Oh, just get over it. Oh, you gotta let go. Easier said than done. That is a completely honest report from someone whose pain became the last coherent structure of self after everything else collapsed. After your marriage collapses, after your career collapses, after you lose everything, what's left? All I have is pain and suffering, and I'm gonna turn it into a steel ball, and I'm gonna hurl that ball at anyone who tries to hurt me again. And sometimes that ball becomes armor. Well, I will not let you hurt me again. I will not let anybody put me in that position again. So the file becomes armor. And you think you're protecting yourself, but actually you're isolating yourself from your life. Because the wounds are attached to a story. They're attached to an identity. They're attached to a life that you lived. You may not have wanted any of it, but that's the life you had, and that's the cards you were dealt, so to speak. But now you're the wronged one. You're the one who endured. You're the one who suffered, but you're still one who's still moving forward, or trying to. You're still alive, and part of your fuel to move forward, even if it's just a little bit, is the hope, the belief, the dream that one day you will be repaid for all of these things. And why do we hang on to these things? Why do we hang on to our pain? Because we feel that if we release it by our own accord, without getting what we need from it, without getting that payment, it doesn't feel like freedom. It doesn't feel like, I'm peaceful, I'm free of that. It doesn't feel like that. It feels more like being asked to demolish the last remaining structure of who you were. It feels like defeat. It feels like giving up. It feels like giving in. It feels like letting them, whoever hurt you or destroyed your life, letting them get away with it. Scot-free. Maybe even better. Maybe their life is great and you're stuck in your misery because of them. That doesn't feel like freedom. That doesn't feel like peace. It feels like more anguish. And here's what makes that resistance so hard to move through. Because when peace does start to appear, when you finally get a glimpse, you're finally letting things go, time is pushing those things further and further away from you. Hopefully you quit thinking about it as much. Maybe those calm down. But when peace starts to appear, when something in you starts to consider that carrying all this around may not be necessary anymore. Part of the system doesn't interpret that as freedom. It interprets it as betrayal, betrayal of yourself, betrayal of the hurt self, betrayal of the reality of what happened. I can't let it go because it's going to take away from the reality that it happened. Because if none of y'all are going to do anything about it, if God's not going to do anything about it, I can't let it go. How am I supposed to let it go? That means I let him or let her or let them get away with whatever it was that happened. Can't do that. So we spend years carrying these boxes around, this anger, this betrayal around. That's why healing can feel threatening before it feels like relief, because it's part of your identity. I don't want to give that up, because then I don't know who I am without it. I've built these walls, I've built this identity around all my pain and suffering, even though I don't like it, even though I didn't choose it. Somehow I found myself here, and now this is all I have. This is all I know. I can't give this away yet. Because the pain wasn't just pain, it was proof. It was loyalty to yourself, or at least that's what we tell ourselves. It was the answer to the question of, who am I? When everything else collapsed, I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still moving forward. And of course that voice resists. It resists peace. It resists integrating what happened to you, not forgetting it, not forgiving it, just not reliving it. Because the work isn't to override that voice. The work isn't to shame it. It isn't to shed it up. It isn't to argue with it into submission or just white knuckle past it. It's to integrate it. Building what happened to you into something solid enough that your life can stand on it. Because if you're still in the boxes and still carrying the grief around, you have built your life upon a scaffolding of pain and suffering, which is a very weak foundation. It may seem strong, but it's not. And it's just like a house of cards waiting to topple. Because the more pain and the more suffering you go through, it puts more pressure on that weak foundation, and eventually it will collapse. So the question isn't, how do I force myself to release these things? The question is, what would have to be true for the carrying of it to become unnecessary? And that question changed everything about how I moved in my life next. I don't actually know the exact point where I realized that carrying this stuff around wasn't going to give me the desired result that I wanted, that the universe could not actually repair what had happened, let alone just pay me for my pain and suffering. It wasn't a dramatic moment either. It was more like exhaustion. I was tired. I was tired of pushing. I was tired of believing. I was tired of just living in a small ball surrounded by grief. The file was heavy, both boxes, and I had carried them around for years, adding to them. It had always been heavy. It had always been calling, but I had always been calling that weight justified. Yes, you feel strong when you're carrying something. I'm carrying all this weight, I'm carrying all this pain, I'm carrying all this misery, and I'm not letting it get me down, even though it kind of was, but that's one of the lies I told myself. But I'm strong, I can handle it, I will push through, better things are coming, law of attraction, I'm manifesting better, all that kind of stuff. So I tried to stay positive, even though it was difficult. But there came a time where I realized these boxes are too heavy. This weight is not something I was meant to carry my entire life. What happened were events that I was supposed to learn from. And I have, retrospectively. I had to look back at each of these points, and what did I learn from them? What was I supposed to learn from them? What kept happening to me in different phases and different faces, but the same lesson that I was not learning? So obviously they kept coming back around. So what did I learn from each of them? Now integrate that into myself. That's part of me now, what learned from that pain. So the pain is not just pain itself, not if you transmute it, so to speak, but turn it into a learning experience that you can move forward with instead of moving forward because it happened to you. I didn't surrender to it. I didn't destroy it. I didn't pretend that those events weren't real or they didn't hurt me. It wasn't like, oh, well, things happen for a reason, I guess I'll just deal with it. No, I had to learn or realize what it was I was supposed to learn from these things. And most of it was just my own bad decisions. If I'm being honest, it's like, don't make those decisions again. Be more clear-headed. Respect yourself. Don't throw yourself out there. Don't give stuff away that's not being reciprocated. So I did not fill out the survey. I left it on the counter. I even left my boxes there. I didn't need the receipts. I didn't need the files anymore. They were inside me. They were internally. They were in my mind. They were in my spirit, I guess you could say as well. Left them there as well. Turned around and walked out the door. And what was on the other side of that door of the waiting room wasn't what I expected. It wasn't justice. It wasn't an apology that I was looking for. It wasn't the cosmic correction that I demanded. It was something quieter and more useful, actually, than any of those things. It didn't feel like freedom immediately, leaving those things behind. It felt like setting something down. I had been holding for so long that my arms had forgotten what it was like not to carry it. The wound was still there. The injustice was still real. The arbitrator agreeing with me was still on the record, but none of that changed. What changed was the condition inside myself. I stopped requiring the past to cooperate with my belief, my intention, with my thoughts of how things should go before I was allowed to be at peace. I stopped making the present conditional on a reimbursement that wasn't coming. I stopped standing in a line that led to a window that could validate everything, but repair nothing. And in that space, something opened up. Not immediately, not dramatically, not at all at once, but my actual life returned to me. The stuff I was carrying around was an anchor, keeping me from living my life. The wounds didn't disappear, but it stopped being the address that I lived at. It stopped being my identity. And that's kind of what it feels like when peace arrives. It's quiet. Your mind isn't as racing so much. You do feel a sense of relief. Not completely. Not everything is settled, but just a moment of calm that continues forward, that I don't need to carry this stuff with me any longer. I learned from it. I've grown from it. And I'm moving on with it, integrated. So if you recognize yourself in any of this, I just want to say this one more time. You don't have to keep bleeding to prove the wound was real. We know it was real. You know it was real. Continued bleeding is not evidence of it. Stop picking at the wound. Stop carrying it around with you, please. Peace is not approval of what happened to you. Having inner peace and letting these things integrate into you is not saying that what happened to you was okay. You're not justifying it. You're not letting it go. Peace is not pretending the file wasn't real either. Those contents were accurate. The years in line that you spent were painful. But peace is simply this: withdrawing your present life from the waiting room. Take your life back. Set the boxes down. Leave the survey on the counter. Your life is outside. Ask me how I know. I'm M. Everett K. I'll talk to you soon.